watching to find out how we almost got attacked by a bird. And we also learned a few lessons about photography with a bored toddler.
Welcome to Next Pursuit.
This week, follow along on our road trip as we say farewell to Florida while I work on my nature photography. We visited Canaveral National Seashore, Mead Botanical Gardens, Orlando Wetlands, a personal favorite spot for wildlife and bird photography, and Marina Park. But first, the cameras. Well, as you can see, I have a little bit of a problem. My main camera is Fuji X-T4. I like shooting vintage lenses. I also have a few other. I like the pancakes too. I like being able to travel with something small. This was my previous everyday camera, Sony A77, but it started having some issues a couple years back. Sometimes it won't boot up at all. Sometimes when it boots up, it does not boot the autofocus system. So I had to upgrade. Film camera that I don't use much anymore, even older Sony that I never really liked, to be honest. This used to be my old travel camera. It's one of the original Rebels. This is also a Rebel that's actually my dad's now. I gave that to him and just borrowed it for a recent trip, because I currently don't have a travel camera. Maybe soon. Not far from where we used to live, we drove out to Merritt Island to the Canaveral National Seashore on Florida's Space Coast. Our goal as we pulled into parking lot number 1 of Playalinda Beach, not number 13, the nude beach, was to try and catch the colors of winter for a photo contest. But being Florida, it happened to be overcast the day we visited. Trying to embrace our circumstances, we stayed, and I instead tried to capture the waves and scrub around Kennedy Space Center. The best part of the day was Malcolm and his camera. Being Florida, it was, of course, overcast, which I really hoped would try and convey a cool color to the photos. I took 2 cameras this trip. This is probably the last trip that I actually brought the Sony out with me. I used the Minolta 50mm prime that I tend to like on that camera, and for the most part with that camera I kept it wide open to try and freeze some of the wave water action. I don't know if anything out of that camera actually turned out worthwhile. It was still pretty grainy even at ISO 100. It's an old camera, it's fun to shoot, it tends to be a little dark. I tend to shoot a little dark as well, so the combo doesn't always work out great, but I even like to crush my blacks sometimes, so it does have a pleasing fall off sometimes if you can find something that will fall off into the abyss. I shot with the Fuji there as well, the 16 to 80 Fuji zoom lens. With the Fuji, I was more trying to get some motion out of the waves as opposed to freeze them, though I did play with aperture a bit. A lot of what I took was f/22, which is the highest aperture you get on that lens. I did play with aperture a little bit. I think there's quite a few at f8 where I tried to just get something reasonably sharp. I liked this little branch in the middle, and I kept trying to find a way to frame it where it added some sort of emotion to the photo. I'm not sure I actually accomplished any of that. I do think I stopped that all the way down at some point to try and get some freezing of the waves, but it only goes down to 5.6, so it didn't really do much as far as freezing the waves. As stated earlier, the goal here was to try and convey winter in Florida, which is a little overcast, but there's no snow or anything like that. I don't think that I actually conveyed anything of the sort. That was a fail, but that's photography. What was a success, though, was giving Malcolm the camera. He loves to come out and shoot with me, and to be honest, I think some of his photos are better than mine.
I'm going to keep an eye on it so it doesn't come off, okay?
Okay.
Keep an eye on it. But what if we look at all that seaweed. How do we put it in the ground? Mommy, it's not planting.
On a day trip to see what all Winter Park, Florida had to offer, we found the Mead Botanical Gardens. I figured that this location would be a good opportunity to work on my macro photography. But the gardens appeared to be set up as more of an event space, and I was skeptical that I would find any inspiration. However, by taking my time, I unexpectedly ended up getting some of my best shots. It was a lot of fun, and I could spend hours walking through a flower garden taking pictures. What I tend to look for in taking photos is color, shape, light, and flower photography really gives me a lot of that. Here we have some really tall sunflowers, which kind of made you feel small. Hopefully the photo also gives that impression. I did shoot at f8 to try and get a little sharpness in the flowers. I definitely don't want to go wide open for something like that. I'd like to get as much in it as possible, though f22 wouldn't get the sharpness I want in some of the petals. After that, we've got this purple plant here and some absolutely gorgeous light that both hits that plant and, more importantly to me, the frond in front of it that I used as foreground. I played with this one a lot. I probably have 30 pictures of this one thing, and I think I actually prefer where we have the foreground in focus and just a hint of what is behind, because the light plays so well in that leaf, and it really works great when you blow out the background and you just kind of look, what is back there? It's shape and color that just kind of speaks to me. I really enjoyed this birdhouse here. I tried to destroy the background. I tried to clip my highlights. You can see that it's quite a bit brighter than most of my other shots because I really wanted to separate it from the background. I don't know if I think this is one of my favorite shots, but Casey seems to like it, so clearly I did something. Now, this flower here, it just has a good shape. It has some good colors. It has some great texture, and I don't know, the colors behind it seem to make the red and the purples pop. It's just something interesting. This white flower here with its wisps coming out, it seems so ethereal, and I was able to get the background extremely dark, which is something that I like to do. There's just a hint of vegetation behind it, and everything in front of it is nice and bright and poppy. I like this picture. It gives me an emotion. I'm not entirely sure what that emotion is, but I like ethereal, and this kind of feels ethereal to me. This was just an interesting, I don't even know what it is. I definitely tried to separate it so that it was the focus, which of course I do a lot in my flower photography. Everybody says that the biggest mistake beginners make is by shooting everything at wide open, which is 100% true if you're shooting everything. But when it comes to really zooming in on something, I like to just get rid of the background. Just some general colors behind it. It makes the focus the thing that you're photoing. It can have some issues, like you can see that the bottom here is not quite in focus, but it was an interesting thing, and if you don't blur out the background, sometimes you lose the interest in the object itself. Now, I gotta say, Malcolm was very bored here. As always, I am tending to have to shoot very quickly. Compose, settings, everything has to be done, I don't know, 6 seconds or less. And here he was bored, which is not just keeping up with other people walking, it is keeping up with other people walking and trying to make sure that we keep him contained and not trying to do anything ridiculous that he's not supposed to. So that was something.
Oh no, the bridge is closed!
We have actually visited the Orlando Wetlands in Christmas, Florida, many times for photography, and I've never gone and not seen an alligator. The last couple times that we have visited, I really wanted to catch a bird in flight, though I do keep forgetting to change my settings back to action instead of single shot. But what I wasn't expecting was an egret protecting its nest to come so close and ruffle its feathers at us. Cassandra took the hit and got Malcolm out of the way, but I was oblivious and spent the whole time trying to get the shot. Luckily, she got my attention. I don't know if it would have done much more than that, but we didn't need to provoke it any further and find out. I do feel bad, but we were on the path, and I thought I was only photoing a bird flying around. So when I shoot, I tend to lean towards single objects. I tend to try and get as close as possible. I'm trying to branch out of that a little bit and get more moving things. Birds in flight are wonderful, but I have a problem remembering to change my settings. So as you can see here with this bird, it is very much out of focus until it stops. And you can see I was fully closed on aperture. My shutter speed was super low. I don't know if it was in focus or not, or if it was just the movement caused the blur, but I was definitely not ready for this shot, even though I kept trying to get it. You can see that after I was notified of what was going on, I changed some settings real quick and we tried to move out of its way, and I ended up actually getting a couple shots of the bird with wings open flying back to its nest. I absolutely love playing with light and shadow. I love crushing blacks, blowing out highlights. I know this isn't what you're supposed to do, but to me it conveys something more than the picture itself. I love a good silhouette, and just the sun hitting the water, silhouetting these two birds swimming along. I really enjoyed this shot. We did see an alligator swimming by, which was really cool. Normally we see them just sitting there, and we don't get quite this close. You can even see in a couple of the shots how clear the water was. You can fully see his body and everything he does to make himself move through the water, which was fantastic. These shots themselves probably aren't that great, but as documentation of something cool that we've seen, I enjoy it. Getting action shots is something that I'm really trying to work on, and it really revolves around me remembering to switch to settings while I'm walking around and then switch back once I find something stationary.
The other side over there, that's what the beach is.
An hour before dawn, we set up the tripod in Fuji at Marina Park in Titusville, Florida. I really wanted to catch the twilight sunrise behind the bridge. It had been so colorful the previous few mornings on our walks, but I never had my camera on those trips. Although we got to see dolphins that morning, I must have forgotten this is Florida, because once again, it was overcast. Instead, I decided to try and take a photo every 5 minutes. I'm not sure what my intention was, whether it was stitch them together as HDR, or a soft, long exposure look, or just do a time lapse. But hey, it was fun to be out with a camera. When I shoot, I tend to shoot while walking around. I look for something that intrigues me. I look for light that makes me think. I look for shapes that make me think. So this was just something new. I almost never bring a tripod anywhere. We decided to take a tripod, go try and catch the sunrise. Past that, I don't really know what my motivations were other than maybe just try playing with a tripod. We set up a single frame and we just kept shooting every time the light changed a little bit. I would change the settings every now and then. I really do like to change my apertures to see how it affects the photo. That's definitely one of my favorite things to change. I tend to shoot in aperture priority. I tend to shoot with a prime lens. There really wasn't much going on in this overcast morning. You couldn't get much of the sunrise. There wasn't really much color shift because of the clouds. We did manage to catch a dolphin, which was pretty cool. There were lots of dolphins there that morning, but we only managed to grab one in the photo. We tried to stitch them together in post, but to be honest, I'm not big into editing. I'd rather try and catch the photo in camera. Photography is more of a capturing thing for me as opposed to a making thing. I love to make stuff as well, but that's not what photography is for me. I don't know, it was an interesting experience. After we realized we weren't going to get much with the sunrise, we decided to walk around the park like we do a lot. But this time I had a camera, and so I was taking a look around. I saw this red leaf floating around, all this green moss and brown rock and moving water. I really liked it. I don't know if I actually captured what I was looking for. I tried to freeze the water a little bit with f4. I definitely tried to move out for a sharper image of the rocks and the leaf with a softer image of the water, but somehow that conveyed less movement of the water. Yes, it softened the movement, which is what I was expecting, but it didn't exactly convey the motion that was happening as well as I had hoped. I really like a long exposure water photo. This didn't quite have that feel, but it also didn't convey the motion that I was seeing there. But I do like the red leaf contrasting the green moss and the brown rock in the foreground. So it was something. Afterwards, I did see a rock covered in moss. When the sun did peek out a little bit, it gave a nice orange glow to the water, which really offset the green moss. I think this is one of the better photos from that trip. It likely needs a slightly different crop or something like that. I'm not a huge fan of the two rocks creeping into frame, but overall I do like these images because of the light and the way it changes the color of both the moss and the water. Since this point, I have started playing around with white balance a bit more, so we'll see if anything comes of that. As stated previously, I have been trying to get more of some flying birds, and I do like silhouettes, so I did try to shoot a few gulls in front of the light peeking through the clouds. And again, probably could use a crop, but I don't know if anything would actually come out of that.
Maybe I can climb on those rocks.
Shooting overcast is great for a lot of things. It definitely helps provide some texture in certain situations. And I do love texture, but overall, I think I didn't embrace the overcast as much as I should have, though at the same time, I did play with some things that I wouldn't normally play with, so win-lose. I had fun. I learned. What more can you ask for?
Hit subscribe if you want to watch the next video. Bye!
Subscribe.
Hello, this is my camera. My name is Malcolm, and this is a cool camera. But I have a couple. There is one that is blue, and one is waterproof, so that they gave to me. I bring this to trails, and I bring this to other kind of trails. I bring this to even out into the mountains when we walk them. I have a problem. One, this button is too small. And two, I don't know what that one's for.
That's the microphone.
Three, that is not actually something that is bad, but it's a bad problem. But these are all things that this rose means you can plant in the garden. But this trash thing means no things that you can put in the trash. And this is all done, but I have one more thing. These are things that are mystery and I don't know. But this is actually something where you shoot with the lights out and everything is a problem in here, but I think this one doesn't take batteries, but this thing has a little battery clump inside this little thing, and this is a little thing handle when you take over, and like that. That's just something to scare away the birds. I think that's all. Bye.